Well, hope you're enjoying living there with Denzel, but now it's time for the latest in business with me, Simon Oktela. And of course, thank you so much for joining us. We're down here at the Sheraton Kampala Hotel, where we do take a look at what's happening in the world of business. First, take a look at what's coming up on the show tonight. Coming up, commercial banks to lend money to government through treasury bonds and treasury bills. Also on the program, taxing women. We discussed the 15 trillion shillings to be raised by Uganda Revenue Authority in the 2017-2018 national budget. And in personal finance this week, the question is, what must you do to restock your business? This and more in just a bit. Thank you for joining us on the show tonight. And this week we'll start with government treasury bills and bonds, and all commercial banks can now do that according to Bank of Uganda. Of course, in the recent past, very few banks have been participating in this. Actually, it has been the key banks in the country. But this now, according to experts, will ease, loan acquisition, because me and you as a lender, we can give our money to the government, of course, through your bank. This is also expected to ease acquisition of loans for most businesses. Just take a look and see how this will work. The Bank of Uganda recently allowed all commercial banks to deal in government treasury bonds and bills, thus removing the monopoly of big banks in the primary dealership market. While this is expected to make securities trading to be more competitive, there are fears that the private sector will find it harder to access financing. This is because the banks will prefer to lend to government, which is less risky borrower.
Going forward, all commercial banks will have similar access to the Central Securities Depository, CSD. All the banks will be able to open CSD accounts at the Bank of Uganda for their clients.
However, the cartel of big banks has lost on the incentives they enjoyed as primary dealers, since they have to compete with the smaller entities.
So, while it's good for the public that they don't have to run around looking for the 6 primary dealers, they can go to any bank or whatever bank of their choice. For purposes of liquidity creation, purposes of vibrancy in the secondary market, I think there will be still a challenge.
On the other hand, this development may cause a panic amongst borrowers in the private sector, since the banks will prefer to lend money to government or make it more restrictive for businesses to access loans.
Banks have competing products with these fixed income instruments. So a bank is selfish. They would want to market their own instruments before they give you a treasury bill. So I see that as a challenge. But the major challenge that I have seen over the years is lack of retail participation in these auctions. The retail segment of the market is very, very weak.
Bank of Uganda reports that primary dealers have in the past year enhanced participation in the secondary market, with a turnover of 3.6 trillion in 2016 compared to 3.2 trillion shillings in 2015. So the question whether women should be paying taxes just because they are women, or how they can be supported in business, is probably something that will somehow stay, depending on how women push for, self-empowerment and all that. But some experts will tell you that women have to pay taxes because it's literally every Ugandan's mandate, to pay taxes. And joining me on set is Nelly Businje Gisha, who is the program officer for CRT in Uganda. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Taxes and women, what runs through your mind?
What runs through my mind is to try and demystify and try and move away from the issue of whether women are paying more or not. To try and change that perception and bring another discussion that is more or less encouraging them to be more compliant.
Yes.
And then also in pushing for more resources to services where women would benefit. Most social sectors, yes. Health, water and sanitation, because that's where really most of our women are using. And so that is the kind of discussion as Siatini and our partners across the region and the country are trying to push for. So it's more about how do women tap into the tax bracket. Then if the resources that are being collected through taxation, are they being channeled to those social sectors that would ideally benefit women?
Because I'm thinking, for instance, the men pay taxes, the women pay taxes, but most women don't use the roads, for instance.
More or less, yeah, but it depends, I guess. Yeah, but also, if you go to the out of Kampala here, in the districts, in other grassroots, most of the women who are accessing the roads are going to the markets to sell their produce. The roads are not well constructed for them to move around, and if you notice, most of them are using, most of the women up country ride bicycles. Bicycles, motorcycles, and they're going to do different businesses. So the challenge though is that the tax system is not disaggregated. It's not to say that this is how much women are paying, this is how much, everything is lumped together. Okay. So I think people need to move away now from that discussion of who is paying most. It's good to disaggregate, which is ideally URA should push for. It show that sense of understanding of who is really paying. And I think also the discussion is that also I think women are more compliant. I think because of the sense of their character generally. Yes. And I think they have, and that is also a good thing, I guess. But I think the issue now for us is how do these resources that are collected benefit them in the end? That are they able to access the good roads? Are they able to access services? All
right, I just want to take you back a bit to the services. And earlier you said the roads, for instance, is one of the things that should be worked on. Are there other sectors that you as Siatini think should be looked into so as to support the women who are actually paying taxes?
Well, I think by and large, the social sectors that ideally would really benefit women if they are really well managed. You're looking at health, especially to issues of maternal health, the death rates and all that. I think it's something that really needs to be. I mean, you don't want to go to a hospital and there is no mama's kit.
And yet you pay taxes.
And yet you pay taxes. Those things are, those packages are very cheap. True. I mean, if you're not earning, you may not be able to access some of those. I mean, now the last few days, the discussion has been around sanitary towels. Now, as of the tax bills 2017-18, they have removed VAT on sanitary ware. Okay. And I think it is partly because of the outcry, so that they are more accessible. The only challenge will be, are they going to regulate the people who sell? Because it would actually benefit them. True. Because if a packet now is 3,000 shillings, and they've removed VAT, you'd expect that it reduces a bit so that people are able to, because at least that the burden will be off. Okay. But chances are it may not be regular. So it's an issue of how can women access some of those services.
All right, interesting. So talking about the 17-18, and I'm just thinking, as Siatini, what are some of the other things that you'd want to see in that line of taxes in the coming budget?
Well, in the coming financial year, we did have a number of interactions at the beginning of the year before as they were preparing the tax bills with Ministry of Finance, Parliament, and we had a number of proposals, of course, where there is an increment. We pushed for incrementing of taxes in some of these not so very good things of the usual things, alcohol and whatnot. We have no problem with increasing taxes on that. We did push. We had requested government to remove tax on water, the VAT on water. Completely, because I mean it's a whole issue of access to water and certain issue. But their challenge is their response to us that is the people who will benefit actually are those who can access it, who can pay for it, and not the people that we are pushing for. Yes. So that did not go very well. But you see that's a challenge. There are some people who rely on paying for jerry cans of water and whatnot. So there is that whole issue of how do you get them to access as much water as possible.
If you're paying your taxes, at the end of the day, you'd expect that the roads are okay, you can access water, health systems up and running. You are the business person. For instance, a business person running a very basic small shop pays a trading license of about 181,000. That's if you are in Kampala, that's every year. But just how sustainable is this? Because besides that, you have to pay the other, other basics also to ensure that that business stands. We're discussing taxes tonight, and as we wrap up this discussion, I know you probably have some info from across the region. How does it work, and what could be your closing remarks in line with this discussion?
Well, across the region, the systems are different. The tax to GDP ratio is the low. Ours actually is about 13. It stagnates between 12.5 to 13%. Is the lowest in the region. URA right now, their target, they've pushed it to about 15 trillion for the next financial year. It is, I mean, with the structure that we've just talked about in the system, it is almost impossible. And there are so many people out there who are in the informal sector earning a lot of money and not paying a single shilling. So it becomes a challenge. So I think the other countries, I'm yet to study extensively exactly how their tax system is, but I know for our tax to GDP ratio being the lowest is a big challenge. It has been the lowest for a very long time. Other countries are where they must be doing something right. So, and that's something I think we need to learn from, to begin to discuss with the region on how, I mean, we're in the EAC together, integration. There must be something that works for all of us.
Sure.
So we can't be that low for all these years. Okay. So I think the question now is, how do we improve our system, and how do we tap into the other countries that are seemingly doing better in terms of how they collect their revenue. So for me, finally, it's just to say that, the country is looking for money. They have no choice but to, we have no choice but to pay the taxes anyway. There is no way you can dodge it, whether you like it or not. Somehow you have to consume something, you have to, sometimes if you want to earn some money and you're in full-time employment, you'll have to pay payee and LST and all that. So I think now the question is, how do we begin to become conscious about that, how much money we are paying every year, and where is it going? Can citizens begin to ask those questions? So that it's more about I paid than I don't want to pay anymore. Yes, but I paid, but this way is the money going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that is Nelly Businje Mugisha for you there. She is the program officer for CRT Uganda, and we're trying to put some sense into, just talking about taxes and women. And it looks like we really had to move off from just women and talk about the taxes in general, because it's something that affects all of us. Once again, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you.
All the best.
Very much.
Oh, Nelly there, and that's it for now. Thanks for watching. This week's personal finance tip is basically one line. And listen, if you're running a business and you're not very sure of how it's working, I'm talking about you're not counting the profits, but you keep putting more money in that business. Let's say after 6 months, you're not seeing the profits, but you are still pumping more money into the business. And all you say is the business is growing. What I can say is the business is struggling. You need to give your business some time. Give it 6 months, find out operational costs, total investment, and the output. Then when you're done paying your workers and all that, the extra expenses, what is left should then be able to give you the results on as to whether you are performing or your business is struggling. That should do it for personal finance for this week. Thanks for watching. That's the latest in business, and of course for all of you that are watching, you can get back to us, MoneyTrail TV. That's our official Facebook page. Yes, and also you can check me on my Twitter handle right below your screen. Tell us what you think about the show, and of course we'll be back again next week talking about different things that affect you as a business person and how you can improve them. Denzel, we're out.